The great throne hall of the alien palace was silent. The high walls glowed with strange blue lights, and banners of 100 battles hung above. Every alien warrior in the room stood in heavy armor, their eyes sharp, their tusks and fangs ready to show hate if needed. And in the center, upon a seat made of dark crystal, sat the queen, her chest plate. Once shining like a star was broken, a long crack split across it, as if the heart of her power had been struck. The smell of burnt metal still hung in the air, reminding all of the fierce space battle that had shaken even their mighty empire only hours ago. Before her, brought by guards, stood a human. A man in simple repair uniform, his hands marked with grease, his eyes careful, his breath shallow. He was not a warrior. He was not even a soldier. He was just an engineer. Yet the queen had demanded him. "Bring the human," she had ordered, her voice calm and dangerous at the same time. The aliens had laughed when they heard it. Why would their queen trust her sacred armor to a creature so weak, so small, so human? The hall was full of whispers. "He will fail," one alien muttered, his voice carrying through the crowd. "He will dishonor her," another hissed. Shaking his tusks, the man heard them, but he did not look up. He forced his eyes to stay on the broken chest plate. The queen slowly stood, the movement commanding the room to silence. She stepped down from her throne, her tall figure wrapped in silver and black armor, but broken at the heart. Her eyes glowed faintly like molten gold, and when she looked at the human, it was like she was staring through his very soul. She raised her hand and pointed at the shattered plate. "Repair it," she said, her voice sharp but steady. The man froze, his tools heavy at his side. He wanted to speak, to ask for details, to request safety measures, but the weight of her gaze crushed his words before they formed. The queen did not repeat herself. She did not have to. The guard stepped back, leaving him alone in the center of the hall. Every alien eye was now locked on him. Every breath in the chamber waited for his move. The man slowly walked forward, his boots clicking on the crystal floor. The sound was loud in the silence. When he reached her, he could feel the heat from the broken armor. It pulsed faintly, almost alive, as if the chest plate was not just metal but something far deeper. He swallowed hard and lifted his tools. The queen lowered her head slightly, giving him space to work. It felt strange. This was not just a repair job, this was something sacred. The armor of the queen was not just protection, it was a symbol, a mark of her rule. And if he failed, it would not only be his death, it would be shame across all of humanity. The man pressed the scanner against the broken plate. Sparks flashed. The sound of crackling energy filled the air. The crowd gasped softly. The whispers started again. "He does not understand our tech," one warrior sneered. "He will burn her alive," another muttered. The man's hand shook for a moment, but then he forced it steady. He had repaired human ships in the middle of battles. He had held lives in his hands before. This was no different, he told himself, but deep down he knew it was. The queen's breath was slow and steady above him. He could feel it brush against his hair. She did not flinch, she did not move, she was testing him. Sweat rolled down his face as he connected wires, melted alloys, and adjusted strange alien circuits. Every sound of his work echoed across the chamber. The air grew hotter, the smell of burning metal sharper. Time felt endless, like every second stretched into a full hour. Still he kept working. The queen remained silent, her eyes glowing brighter, always watching, always measuring. And then, when he thought the silence would crush him, she spoke. Her voice was low, but it carried to him alone. "Do not fail, human," she whispered. The words froze him for a second, his heart hammering. It was not just a warning, it was a command. It was a promise of what would come if he failed. But there was something else in her tone, something he could not understand. Was it trust? He took a deep breath, forcing his hand steady again. The armor sparked one last time, the crack slowly closing, the plates aligning back into place. He knew this was only the beginning. The repair was not done, but the test had already started, and in that moment, with the queen's whisper still burning in his ears, he realized something. This was not just about fixing armor. This was about survival, respect, and maybe the first fragile link between humanity and the most powerful empire in the stars. The hall waited silent as death as the human's tools glowed brighter and brighter, and the queen leaned closer still, her golden eyes never leaving him. Sparks and shadows, the sound of tools striking metal echoed through the great hall. Every spark that leapt from the queen's chest plate lit the air like a firefly trapped in the dark. The human worked with steady hands, but deep inside his chest, his heart beat like a war drum. He could feel hundreds of alien eyes boring into him, waiting for a single mistake. They wanted him to fail. To prove what they already believed: humans were weak, clumsy, unworthy of touching something so sacred. The queen did not move. She stood tall like a mountain, her golden eyes fixed on him. The glow of the half-repaired chest plate pulsed against her skin, and for a brief second he thought he saw it move, as if the armor was alive. The human frowned, his tool buzzing against the broken seam. He whispered to himself, "This isn't just metal." The queen tilted her head, hearing his words, though he had not meant them for her. The whispers in the chamber grew louder. "He has no idea what he holds," one warrior sneered. "He will melt her heart from inside," another hissed, their tusks clicking together in cruel laughter. But the queen lifted a single finger and silence fell instantly. The human didn't notice. He was too focused, too trapped between fear and curiosity. Sparks danced on his face as he welded two broken lines together. Every time the current ran, the chest plate hummed, not like metal being repaired, but like a voice too low to hear. It unsettled him, yet he could not stop. The queen finally spoke, her words slow and heavy. "You understand nothing of what you touch," she said, her voice reaching only him. The human froze for a moment, but then he forced himself to keep working. He dared to speak, his voice quiet. "Then teach me." Her golden eyes narrowed. Not in anger, but in something else: curiosity. It was rare, almost impossible, for an alien queen to share even a word of knowledge with an outsider. Yet she did not strike him down. Instead, she leaned forward slightly, her whisper brushing his ear. "This armor is bound to me," she said. "It shares my breath, my blood, my power." The man's chest tightened. Suddenly the risk was clear. If he made one wrong move, if his weld slipped, he would not just break armor. He might wound the queen herself, and if that happened, the hall would tear him apart. Before he took another breath, sweat rolled down his temple, the tool slipping slightly in his trembling hand. The sparks jumped, a flash lit the hall, and the aliens gasped as smoke curled upward. One warrior shouted, "He burns her!" But the queen raised her hand again, and silence fell. The smoke cleared, and the human exhaled, the seam glowing, perfectly sealed. The chest plate pulsed brighter, alive again. The queen's lips curved. Was it the beginning of a smile? No, it was too sharp for that. She whispered once more, her words colder now. "Do not mistake my patience for mercy." The human swallowed hard and bent closer, checking the connections. His tools slid into deeper circuits now, places where even alien engineers would hesitate to go. The armor seemed to resist him at first, the current pushing back against his hand. But then, strangely, it yielded, as though it recognized his touch. The aliens in the hall shifted uneasily, their whispers rising again. "This should not happen," one muttered. "The armor accepts him," another growled in disbelief. The human did not hear them. He was lost in the glow, in the strange rhythm of the living armor. His hands worked faster, guided by instinct. It was not training, not knowledge. It was something else, something that made even the queen's eyes widen for a brief second. The sparks lit shadows across her face, and in that light she looked less like an untouchable monarch and more like something ancient, dangerous and powerful. The human leaned closer still, and his tool slipped into the final crack. A surge of light burst outward, bathing the hall in blinding radiance. The aliens staggered back, shielding their eyes. The man fell to one knee, panting, his tool clattering to the floor. And then in the silence the queen lowered her head, her voice softer than before. "You risked your life for a task that was not yours," she whispered, her tone unreadable. The man looked up at her, his face pale but steady. "I only did my job," he said quietly. The queen studied him for a long moment, the glow of her chest plate reflecting in her eyes. And then in front of her entire court she leaned closer, her whisper brushing against his ear again. "But not even my best have done it as you did," she said, her words carrying both warning and something that felt dangerously close to respect. The human's breath caught. He had survived this part of the trial, but he knew this was only the beginning. The sparks still glowed, the shadows still stretched, and somewhere deep in the armor, something ancient had awakened, and it had chosen not to reject him. The whisper of trust. The chamber was silent again. Only the faint hum of the queen's armor filled the space, pulsing with new strength. The human lowered his tool slowly, his hands trembling. He had done the impossible, but he did not dare to celebrate. Every alien in the hall still stared at him, Their eyes sharp and cold, one wrong move, one wrong breath, and their rage would crush him in an instant. The queen stood tall above him, her golden eyes glowing brighter now that her armor was whole again. The long crack that once split across her chest plate was gone, sealed as if it had never existed, but the man knew better. The armor was not just fixed, it was changed, it was responding. He could feel it like a faint echo running through his own heartbeat. The queen tilted her head, her sharp crown catching the light. Then, without warning, she leaned closer, her shadow falling over him. The human froze, every muscle in his body tight. Her voice came low, a whisper only for him. "You touched what no one else could," she said, her breath brushing his ear. The words made his skin crawl, not in fear, but in something he could not explain. He dared to look up, and found her eyes locked on his for a moment. The world around him disappeared. The hall, the guards, the whispers, they were gone. Only the queen and her words remained. "You did not break it," she whispered again. "You did not break me." His chest tightened at her tone. It was not soft, it was not kind, but hidden beneath the sharp edge was something rare, something dangerous. "Trust." The man swallowed hard. Unsure if he should speak, finally, he said in a quiet voice, "I only tried to keep you safe." The queen's eyes narrowed, her lips curving slightly. "Safe?" She repeated, almost amused, almost offended. "No one keeps me safe," she said, her tone sharp as a blade. "I am the one who keeps worlds safe." The man lowered his gaze again, but her whisper stayed in his ears. The aliens around them began to stir. Their voices rose like a storm. "This is not right," one warrior growled. "The armor should have rejected him," another spat. "It cannot accept human hands." The queen did not turn to them. She did not answer. Instead, she stayed close to the human, her presence pressing heavy against him. Then she raised her hand, placing her palm flat against the chest plate he had repaired. The armor pulsed with light, spreading across her body in lines of fire. The glow was strong, steady, alive again. The hall gasped, for it was clear. The human's work had not just repaired the armor, it had strengthened it. The man's heart raced, his breath shallow. He had not only touched something sacred, he had changed it. And the queen knew it. Her whisper returned, even softer, even sharper. "You carry hands that should not belong here," she said. "Yet the armor accepted you." Her words cut deep. But her eyes did not hold hate. They held something else. Something that made his chest feel heavier. Was it recognition? The human finally spoke, his voice low. "Maybe it wasn't just my hands." The queen leaned even closer, her crown brushing the air above his head. "Then what was it?" "Human?" she asked, her voice a hiss of curiosity. He looked up, his face pale, but his eyes steady now. "My will," he answered simply, for the first time. Silence fell not in fear, but in awe. The queen studied him for a long moment, and then, to the shock of her entire court, she whispered words no one thought they would ever hear. "Perhaps your will is not as small as your people." The hall erupted with noise, warriors shouting in disbelief, but the queen ignored them, her attention still locked on the human. Her whisper lingered, burning in his ears. "You are no longer just a tool," she said. "You are part of this test." The man's stomach tightened. He had thought this was about armor, about survival, but now he realized it was something bigger, something he did not yet understand. The queen straightened, her voice loud now, commanding the hall. "The human has repaired what even my own failed to restore," she declared. The chamber fell into stunned silence. No one dared argue, no one dared laugh now. But in the middle of that silence, the human knew one thing for certain. Her whisper was not a warning anymore. It was an invitation into a game that could decide the fate of both their worlds. And though he did not yet understand the rules, he felt a dangerous truth in her eyes. He had earned the queen's trust, but that trust might be more terrifying than her hate. The hidden test. The throne hall trembled. A low rumble shook the crystal floor, dust falling from the high banners. The human looked up sharply, his chest tight. Outside, alarms began to scream, sharp and urgent. The great gates rattled as alien guards rushed in, weapons ready, voices shouting in their harsh language. The queen did not move. She stood tall in the center of the hall, her repaired chest plate glowing faintly with new light. The human's stomach dropped. His work was about to be tested, not in peace but in war. A captain of the guard dropped to one knee before the queen, his voice shaking. "My queen, the enemy returns," he said. "Their ships are breaking through the outer defense." The hall erupted into chaos, warriors shouting, blades drawn. armor clashing as they prepared for battle. But the queen raised her hand, and silence slammed into the chamber again. She turned her golden eyes toward the human, her gaze sharp, unreadable. "This is the moment," she whispered. Though her words were meant only for him, "You claim to have restored what was broken. Let us see if it holds." The human's throat went dry. If his repair failed now in the heat of real battle, she would not need to punish him. The enemy's weapons would do it for her. The queen stepped forward, the glow of her armor spreading across her frame. It was alive, lines of energy racing like fire under her chest plate, running into her arms, her crown, her weapon. The human stumbled back slightly, the raw power shaking him to his bones. The court warriors bowed their heads as the queen moved past them, her cloak sweeping behind her. She did not look back, but her voice carried. "Guard the palace," she ordered. The human stays. The man's chest froze. She was leaving him alive, but why? Did she trust his work enough to walk into battle with it? Or was this the cruelest way to prove his worth, by putting her very life in his hands? The guards surrounded him, their tusks bared, their weapons glowing. One leaned close, whispering with venom. "If she falls because of you, human, your death will not be swift." The man said nothing, his hands clenching at his sides. The queen reached the great gates, her tall figure framed in the glow of the outside fires. The sound of enemy bombardments shook the air, each blast closer than the last. She turned her head once, her golden eyes catching his for a heartbeat. It felt as if she was asking him silently, "Do you trust your own hands?" And then she stepped out into the war. The sky above was lit with fire, ships burning, energy beams streaking across the horizon. The queen's voice roared across the battlefield. Commanding her legions, the human ran to the edge of the hall. Pressing against the crystal window, his breath caught. Her armor was glowing brighter now, every strike against her sending sparks into the air. Blades crashed, weapons fired, enemies surged forward. But she stood like a storm given shape, and every time her chest plate caught a blow, every time energy slammed into her, it held. The seams he had welded did not break. The circuits he had aligned did not fail. The armor pulsed back stronger, almost as if it was alive with her fury. The guards around him muttered in disbelief. "It holds," one whispered, his voice tight. "She should have fallen by now," another said. Eyes wide, but the human did not move, his eyes locked on her. He knew each strike was not just a test of her strength, but of his work. If one weld cracked, if one circuit failed, it would all be over. The battle raged louder, smoke and fire covering the sky. And then, suddenly, a massive enemy war beast charged through the ranks. It was tall as a tower, its hide black as iron, its mouth glowing with molten fire. The alien warriors shouted in fear. Many falling back, the queen stood her ground, her chest plate blazing. The human's heart pounded so hard he thought it might break. She raised her blade, the armor channeling light into it. The war beast roared, slamming its clawed hand against her chest. The impact thundered across the battlefield. Shaking the palace itself, the human's knees buckled, his breath catching. This is it. This is where it fails. But when the smoke cleared, the queen still stood. Her armor did not shatter. The seam did not break. Instead, it glowed brighter than ever, surging with raw energy. The beast staggered back, its molten mouth snapping in pain, and with a single strike, the queen's blade cut through it. Dropping the monster to the ground in silence, the battlefield froze in awe. The queen stood tall, her chest plate shining, her golden eyes burning with fire. And far away, behind the crystal walls, the human exhaled, his legs shaking. He had passed the hidden test, but he knew this was not victory. It was only the beginning. Because as the queen turned back toward the palace, her gaze locked on him once again. And in her eyes was not just triumph. It was something far more dangerous, expectation. The battlefield fell silent. The enemy war beast lay broken on the ground, smoke curling from its body. Alien warriors shouted in triumph, their voices rising like thunder. But none dared cheer too loudly. All eyes turned toward the queen. Her chest plate, once cracked and broken, now glowed with steady light stronger than before. She stood tall, her blade dripping with molten sparks, her golden eyes burning brighter than the fires of war. The human watched through the crystal window of the throne hall. His chest tight, he had not fought, but in his own way. He had stood on that battlefield too. Every strike against her armor had been a strike against his work, his hands, his worth, and he had not failed. The queen walked back toward the palace, each step measured, heavy with power. The gates opened slowly before her, and the guards lowered their weapons, bowing as she passed. The air in the throne hall grew tense as she entered, her presence overwhelming. The human's knees almost gave out as she stopped before him. The glow of her armor reflected in his eyes, a reminder of what he had risked, what he had endured. The court was silent, every alien waiting for her judgment. Would she praise him? Would she kill him? The queen raised her hand, and the human flinched, but instead of striking, she placed her armored palm on his shoulder. The touch was heavy, the heat of her armor pressing through him. Her voice came low, a whisper that froze his blood. "You gave me back my strength," she said, "and with it, I crushed my enemies." The words carried more weight than victory. They carried acknowledgement. For the first time, she had spoken of a human as if he was part of her triumph, not separate from it. The warriors of her court gasped, some even snarled, unable to believe what they heard. But none dared challenge her. The queen leaned closer, her golden eyes locking with his. "You carry a will that my kind did not see," she whispered. "A will that even my armor obeyed." The man's chest tightened. His breath caught. He had expected death or dismissal. But not this, not respect, not trust. He swallowed, his voice weak but steady. "I only did what had to be done," he said quietly. The queen tilted her head, her lips curving into something sharp. "You still do not understand," she whispered. "You were not repairing metal, you were repairing me." Her words struck like lightning. Leaving him speechless, the hall murmured in shock, disbelief spreading like fire. Never had their queen spoken such words. Never had she admitted weakness, and yet she had spoken them to a human. The queen turned slowly, her voice rising now, carrying across the entire hall. "This human has done what none of you could," she declared. "He has restored my armor, my strength, and in doing so, he has earned my attention." The court fell silent. Unable to argue, the human's stomach turned. Attention, in her mouth, sounded more dangerous than threat. The queen looked back at him, her whisper returning for his ears alone. "You are no longer a servant of your kind," she said. "You are marked." The man's hands trembled at her words. "Marked for death, for honor, for something in between?" He could not tell, but her golden eyes held no room for escape. And yet, beneath the weight of her stare, he felt something else, not hatred, not danger, something stranger. Something unspoken. It was not love, not yet, not ever in such a hall, but it was a bond, raw and fragile, forged in sparks and shadows. He realized then that the queen had not only tested his skill, she had tested his spirit. And somehow he had passed. The queen stepped back, her cloak sweeping as she turned to her throne. The warriors bowed, the hall echoing with their obedience. But the human remained standing, his knees weak, his heart pounding, because deep inside he knew this was not the end. This was the beginning of something larger. Her whisper still burned in his ear. "You are marked." The words carried both promise and threat. And as the queen sat upon her throne again, her armor glowing like a star reborn, the human realized he had become part of something far greater than he had ever imagined. He was no longer just a repairer of machines. He was part of the fate of a queen, and perhaps of the galaxy itself. The hall remained silent, but in that silence, a bond had been forged, an unspoken bond, one that no blade, no empire, no war could easily break. And though neither of them said it aloud, both knew. The stars would remember this day, the day a human touched the heart of an alien queen, and she whispered not with hate but with trust,